live. Good morning. It is Wednesday morning, the 31st of May 2023. I'm reading out of Winged Pharaoh, a Joan Grant far-seer novel. She was a far-seer. She used to write books about her far memory in other times. This plays in ancient Egypt. It plays before the flood. Ooh, I've lost my page now. I thought I had a bookmark here. Oh yes, I do. That was a lovely chapter, the last one. We rejoice yesterday, the winged one, because Sekhita has surpassed herself and has come through the ordeal and is now ready to rule, I assume, co-rule with her brother Nea. This is part 5 of the book, and this is chapter 1 of part 5, Marriage of Pharaoh. Only after my initiation did I realize that for long years I had thought of it as a great abyss across my path. Now I had passed over it on a causeway of my own building, and with the golden sandals upon my feet, I could go upon my journey, fearless of the mountains before me. My marriage to Nea was set for the 15th day after my initiation, and on the eve of it I returned to the palace. That night I talked long with Nea, and our hearts rejoiced that together we should be Pharaoh. Though we loved each other, our marriage was but a symbol of our rulership as one Pharaoh. Sometimes I longed to be as other women, to whom a husband is nearer even than a brother, and it is the father of their children. And I asked Nea whether he would not rather have a queen who was a real wife and not his sister. And he said, "There is no one with whom I would share rulership save you. For years I've longed for the day when you would join me on the throne and we could be together again, as we were when we were children. To rule is lonely, Sekhita. I have companions of the chase, warriors to lead, counselors and viziers, yet all of them, however near they are, I am Pharaoh. Only between you and me is there no barrier." Yet I wondered if there was not some woman that he loved with his body as well as with his heart. I asked him this, and he said, "Haven't you been to the women's quarters and seen my lesser wives? There are 4 of them, and I have 2 daughters and a son. But though I am fond of my wives, I would put none of them upon the throne. Pharaoh must rule with one who is equal, his equal. And though Sesket, she is the mother of my son, is gentle and very beautiful, I would not rely upon her judgment, even for the decoration of my sandals. But to you, my dear sister, I would leave the ruling of my country." I remembered that I had seen Sekset at the festival of Horus. I had known that she lived in the palace, but I had not realized that she was Nea's wife. Suddenly I felt resentful then that another woman's child should rule after me, and I said, "Nea, you have children by other women. What if I had a child by another man?" Nea frowned, as he always used to do when he was pretending not to understand me. "You're the royal wife, so if you had a child it would be the first heir, for it would be judged to be mine as well, through the intervention of the gods. But Sekhita, if you're wise, you will let no man put you to bed, for it is the nature of women to like their lovers to be masterful, and Pharaoh can acknowledge no master except the gods. And you would find that when women are with child, they get so bound up in their own bellies that their wisdom is muffled." When I would have protested, he went on, 10 years have you trained yourself for rulership. It would be foolish to let your wisdom be obscured by doing those things that make up the lives of women, whose horizon is an ointment jar, and who rule over nothing but their sleeping place, and even that they hope to lose by conquest. Sekhita, is better to hold the flail than to put a napkin on a crying child, or to sit upon the throne beneath Tahuti's scales than to lie upon a bed beneath a man. Those are easy words. You are Pharaoh, and may have 100 women, yet you grudge me 1 man. Not 100 women. I only have 4, and 2 of them are only wives in name. One is 11, and the other is 9. They are daughters of 2 of my viziers, and I never see them except to give them toys and to know that they are happy in my house. Perhaps I shall listen to your wisdom, Nea, or it may be that I shall be guided by the same laws that you keep. For though I am your wife by ceremony, you have other earthly realities. Perhaps I shall not share your throne. I may share your... Perhaps I shall not only share your throne, I may share your privileges as well. You should use the memory that for so long you have trained, and try to find some record of your own to show you the foolishness of that idea, better than my arguments have done. And then he said he must go, for I must sleep long that night, as the morrow's ceremonies were tiring. Before he went, he put his hand upon my shoulders and seemed about to say something, but he left me without speaking, and I did not see him again before the ceremony. On the morning of the day that I became Pharaoh, I prayed long to the gods that in my hands the crook and flail should be true symbols of their wisdom, of their justice, and of their compassion, and that when I gave the oath of Pharaoh, I should find true words to convey my thoughts, and that my speech should be clear and unfaltering. Away from earth, I had talked with my father, and I knew that he was glad that his wish to see me rule with Nea would have come to pass before I slept again. My wedding dress was of fine linen, pleated across the breast and shoulders and reached my feet. It was embroidered with bees, reeds and lotuses, and round the hem were 7 rows of gold threads, which makes it stand out like the bell of a flower. I wore the 5-rayed pectoral, each bead of which was shaped like a leaf, the symbol of one's earth life. The first row was of faience, symbolizing the kat, the second of copper, for the ba, the third of silver, the nam, the fourth of electrum, the za, and the fifth of thrice refined gold, the mat. Each link of my gold bracelets was in the form of a double-headed lion, symbolizing all-seeing earthly power. I wore the fillet of the golden cobra, which could only be worn by one who had overthrown the cobra of the 7th ordeal, and in so doing had added its strength to their will. In the royal litter of 24 bearers, I headed the marriage procession to the temple. Children strewed my way with flowers. Zeb, with Nati and Zima at his side, followed me carrying my standard. Then came 3 captains of the royal bodyguard, each with his 100 men, bowmen, mace-bearers and spearmen. Behind them were 200 musicians, some who sang and some who played upon flute, harp or reed. Then in litters of 4 bearers came the women of the royal household, and the wives of nobles according to their rank. Girls followed leading white oxen garlanded with the scarlet lilies that I had dedicated to Ptah, in memory of the day when I first met Nesera. And lastly came the bearers of gifts from the 2 lands, tusks of ivory and collars of gold, jars of unguents and alabaster flasks of precious oils, necklaces of lapis lazuli, of carved carnelian and of white whinstone, silver and malachite and leopard skins. Round the forecourt of the temple of Atet were ranged the captains of the armies, their burnished shields blazing like the sun, making a wall of light. A statue of Ptah of gilded cedar wood had been set at the foot of the pillar and terrace, and before the gateway to the inner courtyard was the great double throne of red granite, upon which was the seated statue of Sa'atet. A great company of priests wearing their ceremonial robes of office was assembled on the steps of the terrace. The seers with the scarlet double feather of Ma'at, the priests of Horus with the folded wings of the hawk framing their faces, the priests of Ptah with the gold key of life, the lookers with their winged moon disk, the priests of Anubis with their yellow cloaks clasped by 2 gold jackal beads. Their white robes, brilliant in the sunlight, were bordered with lines of violet, one for each life of temple training that they had undergone. Nea, holding the flail and wearing the red crown, waited for me before the statue, and beside him was my mother, who wore the white crown and held the crook. First Nea and I made ceremonial offerings to Ptah. Then, followed by the priests, my mother led us across the inner courtyard by the Hall of Sanctuaries. Nea and I went alone to the sanctuary of Ptah, for all, when they are united before the gods, are alone, except for the priest, who is their symbol. The high priest stood above and behind the statue, so it should be seen that it was Ptah who spoke to us. First he called us by our true names, and then he said, "You who at your birth were called Nea, and who as Pharaoh are the second to bear the name Sa'atet, and you who at your birth were called Sekitara, and who as Pharaoh shall bear the name Zat-Atet, wife and daughter of Za'atet. Henceforth you shall show to all people that on earth you travel upon the same path, even as your spirits have traveled together through the spheres. If one of you grows weary, then the other shall give him of his strength. If one of you should lose the way, then shall the other show him the way to freedom. If one of you is assailed by the arrow of evil, then shall the other be his shield. You shall be unto each other as the crook is to the flail, as the arrow is to the bowstring, as the steering oar is to the boat of time. Together you shall be father to a great people, and you will cherish them, even as I, Ptah, have cherished you. You shall be the ears with which they hear wisdom, the mouth with which they speak wisdom, the eyes with which they see the fruits of wisdom upon earth. Now is your sun at noonday, and when your life is at sunset and you return to your true home, then let my heart rejoice in your day's journey. Henceforth Sa'atet and Sat-Atet are Pharaoh." Then before the priests in the Hall of Sanctuaries, my mother took off the white gown and placed it upon my head, white crown and placed it upon my head. As Nea and I came out into the court of the Pool of Lotuses, I thought of the time when as a child I had waited there for Nesara on the day that I entered the temple to become his pupil. Now in the forecourt there was assembled a great multitude, who waited, silent as a field of corn, rippled by the breeze, to hear me take my oath before the gods. Standing before the statue of Ptah, and before my mother, who was seated on the granite throne beside the statue of the great Sat-Atet, I gave the oath of Pharaoh. "Mighty Ptah, hear my voice, so that throughout the brotherhood of the gods you may testify that these words spring from my heart and spirit, and are the truth. With this crook I shall shepherd my people, so that their feet stray not from the true path, but march swiftly to the great river, where they may take seat in the boat of time, and ferry across to dwell in the land of peace. With this flail I will drive back invaders of my country. I shall be the protection of the innocent, and wrongdoers shall fear it, so that they change their hearts and retrace their steps to the path of freedom. By the power of the golden cobra I will assail the forces of evil. The temples of calm shall be as lamps in which the light shines strongly, so that none shall walk in darkness. The courtyards of the temples shall echo to the feet of the bearers of golden sandals, so that many tongues shall speak with true knowledge of your country. No child shall know fear or hunger, or be without a parent. No man or woman shall be without a friend, and none shall suffer when their body is no longer strong enough to do their work. For all my people I will be as father. I will be the eyes of the blind and a clear voice to the deaf. I will be a healing ointment to the wounded, and draught of herbs to the sick. I will be a staff to the weak, and a shield to those who are beset with enemies. I will remember always that all on earth were given life by you, and remembering this shall know that all my people are my kinsmen. The gateway of my spirit shall ever be open to your wisdom, so that the light of the gods may shine forth upon my people, and they be guided by your hand on mine. Ptah, by whose life I walk upon the earth, Horus, who trained my will for rulership, Anubis, who showed me the causeway to the gods, to all of you I pledge my sacred oath I will keep the balance of Tahuti's scales. Then my people with one great voice acclaimed me Pharaoh, and my thoughts again returned to the day that I had first entered the temple, and it seemed that I could see a sad little girl who was herself going to be the first time through the gateway to the pupils' quarters. After the vizier of every nome had sworn fealty to me, Nea and I together, Pharaoh, returned to the palace, standing in a chariot of 2 white horses. The way was lined with our people, and the air about us sang with their joy. That night we gave a great banquet in the hall of audience to the priests, viziers, nobles, and captains who had come from throughout the 2 lands to welcome Pharaoh. About the palace stretched the pavilions where this country was housed, and outside the walls oxen were roasted over fires, and 1,000 jars of palace wine were drunk, and there were baked fish and ducks and geese, sweetmeats and cakes, spiced white loaves and beer, so that the multitude joined in the feast. When the banquet was over, we could be alone. I found that my thoughts ran too swiftly for me to escape them in sleep. So I went to Nea's room, and I found that he was awake. We talked for some time of the many happenings of the day. Then Nea said, "We are both too restless to sleep. Shall we go down to the lake and sail? There is a full moon tonight, and a good breeze. Look how it is blowing out the curtains." I went back to my room and put on a plain tunic and left my hair free. We went out through the garden where the moon shining through the fig trees made shadows clear-cut as the black and white plumage of an ibis. I picked some figs to take with us. When we were children, we used to feel that it made it more of an adventure if we took something to eat, even if we went hungry. And I remembered how we used to pretend that we were explorers in the new land, and fruit became the animals we had spared for food, and a flask of water was a soldier's ration on a desert march. A sentry saw us, but in the darkness he took us for a pair of lovers, and he laughed and wished us happy memories. The boat was moored to a wooden platform among the reeds. We untied it and pulled it through the shallow water until we were out of the shelter of the bank. The sail filled as soon as we unrolled it, and as we gathered strength we slid smoothly onto the lake. We saw a hippopotamus and steered away from it, for sometimes they will upset a boat if they have young with them, as this one had. Then we threw over the stone and took off our clothes and swam for a long time in the moonlight. The water was as refreshing as cool linen on the skin. Usually I didn't like bathing in the lake, for sometimes there were crocodiles even in the deep water, but that night I didn't think about them. Here in the quiet darkness it seemed that Pharaoh was not ourselves, but 2 far away people whom we had seen at the marriage ceremony. When I'm away from my body and look down to where I must return when I wake, there is an unreality about earth. My body seems no more part of myself than does the dress, which takes on the line of my body only while I am wearing it. Here it seemed that only Nea and Sakita were real, and that Pharaoh was as far from us as are the temple statues from the gods they symbolize. And I said, "For 10 years I've worked to let things on earth be light upon me. I have thought of priestly things and been much alone, so that I could hear the voice of my spirit. I have striven to open the gateway of my memory, and I have bathed in the light that shone through the ever-widening gate. I have lived with people to whom ceremonies of palaces and courtiers are but toys for children. It will be difficult for me to remember that to the ears of many people, words sound wiser if they are spoken by one wearing the robe of ceremony. In a queen, unthinking actions grow long as the shadows at sunset. A small courtesy becomes a noble graciousness, and a small impatience the lash of a royal anger. It should be easier for you than it is for me, Sakita. You have but to sleep, and you awake refreshed with memory. Sometimes I dream, but often sleep is a dark curtain that is drawn between my lying down at night and my waking in the morning. But Nea, your body is an armor for your thoughts. They do not leap from your mouth as mine do. Your speech is guarded by your wisdom. People hear from you only what you think is well for their ears. Too often I say what is in my heart. I think my hearers are ready for it, but often I misjudge their age. All the years I was with Nesara, I was a pupil of one of great wisdom, one who never once tried my strength, and who always knew what food my spirit needed. But now a great people look to me for guidance. I must never seem unsure, or they would fear to follow me. I must never be impatient or unwise, or they would doubt the justice of Pharaoh. We have each other, said Kita. We shall always have each other. We need never be lonely as I have been lonely for so many years. Nea, we will be so strong in each other that we shall be like two great pillars. Kam shall be the lintel, and together with our people we will be a gateway to the light. In memory of this day we will not set up a stele, but we will build a pylon to the courtyard of the palace. Upon one side there shall be your name, and upon the other mine, and upon the lintel there shall be the reed and the bee, and the lotus and the papyrus, the sun at noonday, and the scales of Tahuti. And there shall be no doors, for it shall be an ever-open gateway to Pharaoh, and they who come after us will know that in our time we upheld justice and truth in the two lands. That was very interesting. So, they are now Pharaoh. Have a fair day.